Tavern shootings have become one of the latest trends in criminality facing South African communities. Dozens of people have died in a spate of mass shootings in taverns around the country. Just last weekend, 2 people died and 14 others were wounded in a shooting that took place at Kwanyamazane in Mpumalanga. 6 men were also killed and 1 injured in Daveyton in Gauteng when attackers opened fire on patrons seated outside a tavern on Saturday. The national Lika traders is now calling on the police and other law enforcement agencies to prioritise dealing with this scourge. To talk about this, Professor Nirmala Gopal, an associate professor in the Department of Criminology at the University of KwaZulu Natal, joins us virtually, while the convener of the national Lika traders, Ntimane, joins us now in studio. A very good morning to you too. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
It's an absolute pleasure having you to join us this morning. I mean, it's a very, very topical and a very important discussion, I would say, we are having today. I'm going to start with you, Lucky, as to what's your understanding of what's driving the scourge?
Firstly, we'd like to send our heartfelt condolences to the families that lost their loved ones, but also wish those that are still in hospital recovering a speedy recovery. It is difficult to really tell what is behind the spate of these senseless killings that we have seen in Mpumalanga and Gauteng, because our understanding is that, these criminals went into these 2 taverns and started shooting. They didn't take anything, so there wasn't an element of maybe thuggery or stealing that was involved. It is just pure senseless killing that took place there. We would like to understand, hence we have made a call to police and other law enforcement agencies to be able to really close this one and go after these killers so that we can understand the reasons behind these killings, because we cannot allow it to happen. Our taverners now are living in fear. They are scared to operate at night because they don't know what's coming next. So it will help to really get closer to understand what is really behind these killings.
And it appears that statements of shock, expressing shock and condemning these incidents are not enough. What else needs to be done?
Yeah, we have to move beyond condemnation.
Yeah.
We need to see real actions. And hence our immediate call to liquor traders is to be vigilant. But also, those that find it practically to do so, put in security so that they can protect their patrons. It is incumbent upon us as liquor traders to ensure that we crave a safe environment for our patrons to enjoy alcohol in a responsible manner. So it's going to be a tough one, if you look at, the manner in which you operate, but also the costs associated with putting security. But what can we do? I think it's now clear that we have to invest heavily in order to protect our patrons going forward.
That's the scary part, the fact that it's not clear as to what needs to be done to protect ourselves and to protect our patrons. Now, Professor, I'm going to rope you in this conversation. What's your understanding, first of all, of what's driving these mass shootings?
So from my perspective, I think, unlike Lucky, I think we do have some indication of what could possibly be driving these mass shootings. And our evidence thus far has shown us very similar to the drug cartels. It could be an alcohol cartel. So it's about competition, it's about greed. And I think that primarily at this point in time is what is probably driving these mass killings at taverns specifically.
Do you think these murders are connected? It's been a year since an uptick of these murders have occurred in South Africa. Do you think we've got any information as to links or leads as to what could have possibly caused this and who is behind it?
Yeah, so I think the links and leads are probably residing within the SABC. I don't necessarily think that SABC is unaware of what is happening, but my suspicion is that as a researcher and a criminologist, is that there's some fear in terms of making that information public. And I think largely because the alcohol industry is so revenue-driven. And perhaps, the reasons for not wanting to make that information public is because it will make a dent on somebody's revenue. And I think it's time we move past that, because it's having a huge impact on society, not just in terms of the shootings, but it's having a host of other negative impacts on our society. And I think that is a huge concern for the South African community and for the South African government as well. And I did hear Lucky talk about increasing security, which is the responsibility of tavern owners, for example. But I'm wondering, what is the responsibility of the state, of the government, in terms of ensuring that we have increased monitoring in spaces where, in taverns or close to taverns, etc., and how how effective is our monitoring, evaluation, and how effective are we in terms of understanding other regulations being enforced, other regulations being monitored. So it's these kind of factors that we need to invest in. And I think we need extra research in South Africa, because currently we are seeing that there's not enough research in terms of the alcohol industry and the impact on society.
Prof, earlier on you made a suggestion that gangsterism and drug cartels who are fighting amongst each other could be the driving force behind this. But then it begs the question, what do the innocent bystanders and the innocent revelers and patrons of taverns have to do with all of this? I mean, what is it that they want from them to be senselessly killed?
So I think they just, they're consequent victims. So they're not necessarily the ones that are the targets, but there's a message. So drug cartels, alcohol cartels, they want to send a message.
Yeah.
And when they shoot innocent people, what they are saying is that we don't want people to be visiting these taverns. So that, I think, is the biggest message.
All right. Now, Lucky, when the police minister Begekele delivered, his crime stats, he blamed Lika and drugs as a contributing factor to so many of South Africa's social ills. So, what's your view on this? What's your view of the role of Lika in terms of the perpetration of such incidents of violence?
I think at a first instance, we must understand that liquor traders are part of society, they're part of community. And, it can't be accepted that liquor traders are then almost brandished as being responsible for crime. But we understand that the irresponsible usage of alcohol and the abuse thereof, might lead to some of the causal factors that we see associated with criminal conduct that we accept. But, we have a role to play as liquor traders, we have a role to play as taverners, and hence we partner with police in many various initiatives. Just in the month of October, we are launching a partnership with the CPF in Tshwane, where we are targeting communities in 5 different policing areas, where we're going to ensure that we're able to fight crime in the communities that we identify. So we take our role very seriously, and it is an active role that we have sought to play in the space to ensure that not only do we fight crime, but also we protect the society that gives us the pleasure to be able to operate in our communities.
And let's now talk about some of the tavern owners and taverns who don't necessarily follow the dictates of the law. A case in point, for instance, is the Enyobeni Tavern tragedy, where underage kids were admitted or were allowed in. So what's your association's role in terms of making sure that every tavern owner, sticks by the law?
We've said this, that we're not going to protect any liquor trader that doesn't abide by the regulations. Even in these 2 incidents that we're talking about today, the issue in Kwanyamazane, it happened around 1 a.m. The outlet was supposed to close at 12 at midnight. In Daveyton, the incident happened at 3 a.m. The outlet was supposed to have closed at 2 a.m. So you understand from the first instance that if you are not going to abide by license regulations, you're then putting at risk our patrons that are coming to support your establishment. And we need to call these outlets out. We need to also ensure that we actively are able to enforce compliance in these liquor traders. We need police and also the liquor boards in various provinces to be able to clamp down on this and close them down. We cannot be giving people second chances when they are not able to do the most basic thing, which is to protect their license to trade.
And so is it safe to say then that those who don't abide by the law, those taverns are a potential breeding grounds for criminality? I mean, they are the enablers of criminality, as it were.
Yeah, certainly. If you have a behavior, that seems to promote, not being able to abide by the license regulation, surely you are also operating at a criminal level yourself. Sure. So you are also going to promote the negative things that will happen in your taverns. And now we've seen that those outlets that didn't close on time, what happened? We've got body bags that are coming out of there.
Yeah. Now, Professor, there's a clear degeneration of humanity here in South Africa, and morality in communities marked by rampant lawlessness. Why do you think we've seen such an uptick of such, lawlessness when there's so many law enforcement institutions here in the country?
So, as I've previously mentioned, it's really sad that we have degenerated into this level of lawlessness. And it's just become such a norm in South Africa for us to have violence, to have this various types of criminality. And I think one of the main reasons is that the trust in SAPs is actually not very high. But in addition to that, I think our CPFs, our community policing forums, in some areas are not very effective, and there's collusion sometimes between criminals and members of, sometimes between criminals and members of the CPFs, etc. But I want to take it one step further, and I want to speak specifically about the relationship. Well, there's some kind of association, a relationship between alcohol use, abuse, and criminality. We have various pieces of research, and especially from the Medical Research Council, who focuses quite strongly on the relationship between alcohol use, abuse, and criminality. And we've seen a strong relationship between alcohol use and violence in South Africa. And the concern for those of us who research in this field or teach in this field is that South Africa already has such a high level of violence. And when we are not responsible alcohol drinkers, it means that we increase the levels of violence and criminality in South Africa. And I think this is where the Department of Trade and Industry and the alcohol industry comes into play, where we need large-scale education, whether it's at taverns, at bars, at restaurants, at schools, billboards, that tell us show us the ill effects of irresponsible drinking. And I think that becomes so critical for this country. Lots and lots of education.
And this is just one element of criminality, I mean, that of the mass shootings in taverns in particular. How do we turn the tide insofar as addressing this issue?
So personally, I think we have to be proactive. For example, Lucky mentioned, closing down and not protecting those tavern owners who are non-compliant. Mm-hmm. But for example, this issue in the Eastern Cape, where they went on beyond the time that they were supposed to close. Surely we could have had law enforcement patrolling, because these are hotspots. These are areas that they would have known that it's end of a term, school children are likely to visit this particular tavern, etc. So proactive rather than reactive policing. I think that's one of the most effective ways that we have available at this point in time.
What do you make then of Police Minister Bheki Cele when he delivered the crime stats saying that drugs and alcohol are a contributing factor to criminality? So in a sense, his statement can be construed as blaming alcohol for the social ills. And like earlier on, poured cold water on such a sentiment, saying that alcohol alone cannot be blamed.
Yeah, I think Lucky is correct there. It's not alcohol alone, it's other contextual factors as well. And perhaps I'm not sure what informed the minister's statement at that particular point in time. But definitely alcohol and drugs are a contributing factor. It's an enabler. So there are various contextual factors combined with the intake of alcohol, and that promotes a particular type of behavior. And lastly, because inhibitions are reduced. So people, depending on the alcohol level and how it affects the brain and the behavior of the person, it will result in particular types of behavior. Not all people, of course, who take alcohol will engage in violent and/or criminal behavior. So we must understand that section of the population. Mm-hmm. But also remember that alcohol and violence has something to do with the DNA of people as well. So it is far more complex than making a blanket statement that there's a direct correlation between alcohol use, abuse, and criminal and/or violent behavior. However, having said that, we do know that a large percentage of our criminality and violent behavior, we can link it back to alcohol abuse.
All right, great chatting to you, Prof. Thank you so much for your time. Now, Lucky, we know that liquor and public drinking has always been rampant here in South Africa. Let's talk about the issue of access to alcohol, especially by the underaged kids or underage drinkers. How do we deal with the issue of access? Because it appears that alcohol is easily accessible, especially in townships and other underprivileged communities.
Yeah, the issue of underage, is something that we cannot afford to sweep under the carpet anymore. We need to be able to address it, and we understand that there are those liquor traders that will put profits ahead of the lives of our people and want to, make a quick buck at all costs. And we are calling on communities because, our communities, because taverns and the community is one and the same fabric. It is known, those people that are selling to underage, they are known in communities. We need to call them out. We need to have confidence back again in the state, in law enforcement agencies, but also in the liquor board to be able to report such outlets. We have about 42,000 taverns in the country. We also have about, give or take, about 10,000 bottle stores. So those establishments, exist, to serve, the adult age drinking population and not the underage. But we need to be able to be careful that, we are not seen not to be doing anything to prevent a scourge. There was a research that was done about last year that found that between the 13 and 14-year-olds experiment with alcohol for the first time. We cannot allow that to happen because it means we are not becoming a breeding ground for people that are going to be abusing alcohol when they reach 18 and above.
Certainly. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.